In the dim glow of a small-town church sanctuary, on a crisp autumn Sunday in 1979, Reverend Harlan Whitaker stood at the pulpit, his voice steady and warm as he wrapped up the morning service. Beside him, his 4-year-old daughter, Sophie Whitaker, clutched her favorite teddy bear, its soft brown fur peeking out from her pink dress. The congregation smiled at the sight, the devoted pastor and his little girl, a picture of innocence and faith. But as the last hymn faded and families filed out into the Pennsylvania sunlight, Harlan and Sophie simply vanished. No goodbye, no trace, just an empty parsonage and a wife left staring at the door that never opened again. For 17 agonizing years, Clara Whitaker held on to hope, until one ordinary day in 1996, she noticed something in a faded newspaper clipping that would unearth a secret buried deep in the woods and change everything. Clara Whitaker had always been the quiet strength behind her husband's ministry. A school teacher by day, she managed the church's bake sales and youth groups with a gentle smile that hid her own quiet dreams. Harlan, with his wire-rimmed glasses and kind eyes, was the heart of St. Mary's Episcopal Church in the rural town of Eldridge, Pennsylvania. He preached forgiveness and community, drawing families from miles around. Sophie was their miracle, born after years of heartache, a bubbly child who toddled through the pews with her teddy bear Mr. Snuggles always in tow. That Sunday, October 14th, 1979, started like any other. Harlan led the service. Sophie sat in the front row playing quietly. After the benediction, he told Clara he'd take Sophie for a short walk in the nearby woods to pick wildflowers for the dinner table, a routine they loved. "We'll be back before lunch," he promised, kissing Clara's cheek. She waved them off, never imagining it would be the last time she'd see their faces. By noon, worry crept in. Clara paced the parsonage kitchen, the roast cooling on the stove. Harlan was punctual to a fault. Tardiness wasn't in his nature. She called the church office, then neighbors, but no one had seen them. As the afternoon stretched, panic took hold. She drove the winding roads bordering the dense forest that hugged Eldridge, shouting their names until her voice cracked. By evening, she was at the local sheriff's station, her hands trembling as she described Harlan's dark suit, Sophie's pink dress, and that unmistakable teddy bear with its stitched smile. Sheriff Dale Harlan, no relation to the pastor, nodded gravely. "We'll find them, ma'am. Probably just got turned around in the woods." But deep down, Clara felt a hollow dread. Harlan knew those woods like scripture. He hiked them often for quiet reflection. With Sophie along, he'd be extra careful. This wasn't a simple mix-up. Something was terribly wrong. The search began at dawn the next day, a frantic mobilization that turned the sleepy town upside down. Volunteers from the church combed the forest trails, their calls echoing through the trees. Harlan. Sophie. Bloodhounds sniffed Sophie's blanket, leading handlers in circles. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their spotlights piercing the canopy, but the woods were thick, a labyrinth of oaks and pines that swallowed sound and sight. Clara joined every team, her shoes muddied, eyes red from sleepless nights. She clutched a photo of Harlan and Sophie from the previous Easter, him in his clerical collar, her hugging Mr. Snuggles. "They're out there," she whispered to anyone who listened. But days turned to weeks with no sign. No footprints, no discarded items, not even a scrap of pink fabric. It was as if the earth had opened and claimed them. Rumors swirled in Eldridge. Some whispered about Harlan's sermons on redemption. Had he crossed someone with a grudge? Others speculated marital troubles, but Clara shut that down fiercely. Their life was simple, rooted in faith and family. Harlan had no enemies, no debts. Yet the lack of clues fueled darker theories. A week into the search, a volunteer found a Bible page torn from Psalms, fluttering near a creek bed. It was weathered, but the verse, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death," sent chills through the team. Was it Harlan's? Tests showed it matched the edition he carried, but how it got there remained a mystery. Sheriff Harlan theorized a struggle, perhaps an abduction. Could be transients passing through, he said. Clara clung to that page like a lifeline, praying it meant they were alive. As winter set in, the official search scaled back. Blizzards blanketed the woods, making further efforts impossible. Clara refused to stop. She spent her savings on private detectives who retraced Harlan's steps, interviewed parishioners, even checked bus stations in nearby cities. Nothing. The case went cold, filed away as one of those small-town tragedies. Clara returned to teaching, but her classroom felt empty. She kept Sophie's room untouched, the bed made, Mr. Snuggles' twin bear on the pillow as a placeholder. Nights were the worst, haunted by dreams of Sophie's laughter fading into silence. The town moved on, but Clara's hope flickered like a candle in the wind. God has a plan, Harlan used to say. She repeated it like a mantra, even as years blurred into a monotonous ache. 17 years later, in the spring of 1996, Clara was sorting old newspapers in her attic, a ritual to feel close to the past. Her eyes caught a small article buried on page 7 of a Philadelphia daily. Construction crew unearths remains in remote woods. The story detailed workers clearing land for a new highway extension, 50 miles from Eldridge, who stumbled upon a shallow grave. Forensics were called in, the site cordoned off. But what stopped Clara's heart was the photo. A grainy image of items recovered, a rusted Bible, fragments of clerical clothing, and a small, dirt-encrusted teddy bear. It looked just like Mr. Snuggles, down to the faded brown fur and button eyes. Her hands shook as she dialed the number listed. "That's my daughter's bear," she told the detective, "and my husband's Bible." The notice that had gone overlooked for months was the spark that reignited everything. Investigators descended on the site, a foggy stretch of forest near the new development. The remains were skeletal, wrapped in a decayed black bag, buried under leaves and roots. Clara arrived the next day, her face pale but determined. "Show me," she demanded. The lead forensic expert, Dr. Lydia Grant, a no-nonsense anthropologist, nodded solemnly. They had already begun piecing together the puzzle. The skeleton was adult male, mid-40s, with fractures suggesting a violent end, cracked skull, broken ribs. Dental records would confirm, but Clara knew. Beside the bones lay the Bible, its cover embossed with Harlan's initials, and the teddy bear, though weathered, matched photos from 1979 perfectly. But where was Sophie? The grave held only one body. Clara's knees buckled. "What happened to my baby?" she whispered. The discovery exploded the cold case wide open. Media swarmed Eldridge, reporters camping outside Clara's home. Sheriff Harlan, now retired, was pulled in for consultations. "We searched those woods back then," he muttered. "How did we miss this?" The site was miles from where Harlan and Sophie were last seen, raising questions of how they got there. Dr. Grant's team scoured the area for more clues. They found traces of rope fibers on the wrists, hinting at restraint. Soil analysis showed the body had been buried shortly after death, preserved by the cool, acidic earth. But the teddy bear was the anomaly, placed carefully on top, as if in mourning. "This wasn't random," Grant said. "Someone wanted it found eventually." Clara's notice had cracked the silence, but it unleashed a torrent of new mysteries. Was Harlan murdered? Abducted with Sophie? And if so, by whom? The town buzzed with old suspicions revived. A former parishioner recalled Harlan counseling a troubled family, the Millers known for their volatile patriarch. Had a session gone wrong? Detectives dug into church records, unearthing a note from Harlan about helping a lost soul the day before the vanishing. It was vague but promising. As the investigation ramped up, Clara felt a mix of relief and terror. 17 years of waiting, and now the truth was clawing its way out. But what if it revealed something darker than she could bear? If you're hooked on this story of faith, loss, and hidden truths, hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling tales that uncover the past. Your support keeps these stories alive. The forensics lab in Philadelphia became the nerve center. Dr. Grant, with her team of experts, dissected every fragment. The Bible's pages were water-damaged but intact, with underlined verses on forgiveness. Harlan's handwriting confirmed by Clara. The teddy bear yielded hairs, some from Sophie, others unknown. DNA tech was emerging in 1996, so samples were rushed for analysis. This could tell us if Sophie was there, Grant explained. Meanwhile, detectives retraced Harlan's final hours. Witnesses from the church service remembered him seeming distracted, glancing at his watch. One elderly woman swore she saw a stranger in the back pew, a man with a scarred face slipping out early. Sketches were drawn, circulated, no matches yet. As weeks passed, a theory emerged: abduction for ransom gone wrong. Harlan wasn't wealthy, but the church had a small endowment. No demand ever came, though. Clara pored over old letters, finding one from Harlan mentioning a burden I must carry alone. Cryptic, but it fueled speculation of secrets in his past, perhaps an affair. Clara dismissed it, but doubts crept in. The search expanded to the Millers. The family had left town shortly after the disappearance. Tracked down in Ohio, the father, Roy Miller, was interrogated. "Reverend helped with my anger issues," he grumbled. Nothing more. Alibis checked out, but his shifty eyes left questions. Then came the breakthrough from the lab. The unknown hairs on the teddy bear matched a profile in an emerging database: a convicted felon named Victor Kane, released from prison months before the vanishing. Kane had a history of assaults, lived near Eldridge. Detectives raided his last known address, finding faded photos of the woods. He knew the area, the lead investigator said. Kane was long dead, heart attack in '85, but his record showed he frequented the forest for hunting. Was he the stranger in the pew? The puzzle was fitting, but Sophie's fate remained the gaping hole. Clara prayed nightly, the newspaper clipping taped to her mirror as a reminder. The notice that started it all was leading to answers, but each revelation twisted the knife deeper. The discovery of Victor Kane's connection sent a jolt through the investigation, shifting the focus from a random tragedy to a targeted crime. Detectives combed through Kane's past, piecing together a man with a chip on his shoulder, ex-con, loner, bitter about his time behind bars. Church records showed he'd attended St. Mary's sporadically, always sitting in the back, never speaking. Parishioners recalled his scarred face and cold stare, a figure who stood out in a town of familiar faces. Clara's memory flickered. Had she seen him lurking near the parsonage? The pieces were aligning, but the why gnawed at her. Why Harlan? Why Sophie? The forest held the answers, and the team knew they had to go deeper. Dr. Grant's lab work intensified. The rope fibers on Harlan's remains suggested he'd been bound, likely killed where he was found. The skull fracture pointed to a blow, possibly a rock or club. Kane's hunting gear included such tools. But the teddy bear's placement puzzled everyone. "It's personal," Grant mused, her gloved hands turning the bear over. The DNA from the unknown hairs confirmed Kane's presence, but no trace of Sophie's remains surfaced. Had she escaped? Been taken elsewhere? The shallow grave's location, 50 miles from Eldridge, suggested Kane moved the body after the act, perhaps to cover his tracks. Detectives mapped his known haunts, finding an old cabin he'd squatted in, abandoned since his death. Inside, they found rusted traps, a blood-stained knife, and a child's shoe, pink, size toddler. Clara's breath caught when she saw the photo. "That's Sophie's," she whispered, tears welling. The shoe was sent for testing, the first hint she might have been there. The cabin became the new epicenter. Forensic teams swarmed the site, a decaying shack swallowed by vines. The floorboards creaked under their boots, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, a journal, Kane's scrawl detailing his resentment toward the preacher who judged me. Entries from October 1979 spoke of a plan to teach a lesson, mentioning a child as leverage. The dates matched the disappearance. He targeted Harlan for some grudge, the lead detective, Officer Mara Jennings, concluded. The journal hinted at a confrontation in the woods, Kane ambushing Harlan during the flower walk, binding him, and striking when he resisted. But Sophie's fate was a blank page. The shoe suggested she'd been with Kane, yet no body meant hope lingered. Clara clung to it, her hands trembling as she held the journal's photocopy. The search expanded into the surrounding forest, a grim retracing of Kane's steps. Volunteers returned, their flashlights cutting through the dusk. Sheriff Harlan, now a consultant, led a team along a creek bed Kane frequented. The air was thick with tension, the rustle of leaves amplifying every sound. On the third day, a ranger's boot kicked something soft, another teddy bear, identical to Mr. Snuggles, buried under moss. Nearby, a small patch of disturbed earth yielded bones, tiny, child-sized. Clara was kept away, but the news hit like a storm. Dr. Grant confirmed the remains were Sophie's, the DNA matching Clara's sample. The bear and shoe were hers, left as macabre markers. Kane had killed her too, likely in a rage or to silence her cries. The forest had hidden her for 17 years, a secret unveiled by that highway dig. Clara's world shattered. She sat in her kitchen, the newspaper clipping now a cruel irony, staring at Sophie's room. The second bear was a twin to Mr. Snuggles, a detail that twisted the knife. Kane had kept it, perhaps taunting Harlan's memory. Detectives theorized he buried Sophie separately to avoid detection, moving Harlan later. The journal's final entry, dated a week after the disappearance, read, "Done with the preacher's curse." It ended there, Kane's silence sealing the case, yet questions lingered. Why the bears? Was it guilt, mockery, or something deeper? Clara refused to believe her husband's faith had led to this. She demanded answers, her voice steady despite the tears. The investigation turned to Kane's associates, tracking down a former cellmate who recalled his rants about a holier-than-thou preacher. No new leads emerged, but the motive solidified. A personal vendetta, sparked by a sermon or counseling session gone wrong. The town mourned. A memorial service held at St. Mary's where Clara spoke of forgiveness, echoing Harlan's teachings. But privately she raged. Officer Jennings promised to keep digging, unearthing Kane's life for any missed clues. The cabin yielded a photo. Kane with a blurry figure, possibly an accomplice. Facial recognition tech new in '96 was applied, but results were inconclusive. Clara kept the clipping and journal, her only links to the past. The forest, once Harlan's sanctuary, was now a graveyard. She walked its trails alone, leaving flowers where Sophie's remains were found, whispering prayers for peace. The notice that changed everything had brought closure, but it was a bitter pill. Her family gone, their love twisted into a killer's game. Months later, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A hunter reported a metal box near the cabin, rusted shut. Inside were letters, Harlan's handwriting, addressed to Clara, dated October 15, 1979. "If you find this, know I fought for her," one read. Another mentioned a dark shadow following him. Had Kane stalked him before the attack? The letters were waterlogged, but a map sketch showed a spot marked S. Detectives rushed there, finding a shallow depression. No remains, but a locket, Clara's given to Sophie, lay buried. "She was alive when he took her there," Grant said. The timeline shifted. Sophie might have survived briefly, hidden by Kane before her death. Clara clutched the locket, a tearful mix of grief and gratitude. The notice had unraveled a nightmare, but each clue deepened the mystery of her daughter's last moments. If you're captivated by this tale of faith turned to tragedy, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories that dig into the unknown. Your support fuels these journeys into the past. The locket sparked a renewed search, teams fanning out from the marked spot. The forest seemed to resist, its undergrowth thick with secrets. Dr. Grant analyzed the locket's wear, years underground, consistent with Sophie's burial site. The letters suggested Harlan had a chance to hide them, perhaps during a struggle. Detectives theorized Kane forced him to write, then killed him, burying the evidence separately. The S could mean Sophie's initial or a safe spot, but no further remains appeared. Clara insisted on joining, her resolve steeling her against the damp chill. She carried the locket, its tiny photo of her family a beacon. "I need to know she wasn't alone," she told Jennings. The locket's discovery fueled Clara's determination, her footsteps echoing through the forest as she followed the search team. The marked spot on Harlan's map led to a dense thicket, where the air hung heavy with the scent of moss and decay. Dr. Grant's team probed the soil, their tools scraping against roots and stone. The S could be a clue to Sophie's final resting place, or a desperate note from Harlan. Clara's heart raced as a ranger unearthed a small tin box, its lid rusted but intact. Inside were more letters, scribbled in Harlan's hand, dated the day after his disappearance. "Clara, he's watching. Took Sophie. Pray for us," one read. The words were smeared, as if written in haste or tears. Another fragment mentioned a cave by the creek, a lead that sent the team scrambling. The creek was a half-mile north, its waters sluggish under the overcast sky. Rangers hacked through brambles, their boots sinking into the muddy bank. Clara stayed close, the locket pressed to her chest. The cave was a narrow opening, hidden by overhanging branches, a perfect hideout. Flashlights pierced the darkness, revealing damp walls and scattered debris. Near the back, a ranger's beam caught something white. Bones, small and fragile, nestled in a crevice. Dr. Grant knelt, her hands steady as she bagged the remains. "Child-sized," she murmured. Clara's knees buckled, but she forced herself to watch. The forensic team worked silently, extracting every fragment. A tiny shoe buckle, matching Sophie's, confirmed the worst. Kane had brought her here, perhaps to silence her, and left her to die. The cave told a grim story. Scratches on the wall suggested a struggle, and a broken branch outside hinted at someone dragging something heavy. The letters painted a picture. Kane ambushed Harlan, forced him to write, then took Sophie as leverage. When Harlan resisted, Kane killed him, burying him miles away. Sophie's fate was sadder, abandoned in the cave, her cries unheard. Dr. Grant found traces of fabric near the bones, pink threads like her dress. The teddy bear's twin, buried with Harlan, might have been Kane's twisted tribute. Clara wept, the locket's photo blurring through her tears. "She was so brave," she whispered. The team collected every clue, but the cave yielded no more answers. Back at the lab, DNA confirmed the remains as Sophie's, closing the case with a heavy finality. The letters were analyzed, Harlan's last plea, written under duress. Detectives tracked Kane's movements, finding he'd fled the area after, perhaps fearing discovery. The accomplice in the photo remained a shadow, facial recognition failing to ID them. Clara held a memorial, the church filled with tearful faces. She spoke of love and loss, her voice breaking but resolute. The notice that started it all had peeled back layers of pain, revealing a truth she both dreaded and needed. Yet, a flicker of doubt lingered. The cave felt too deliberate. Why leave Sophie there instead of burying her with Harlan? Officer Jennings theorized Kane panicked, fleeing before finishing the job. Clara clung to the locket, vowing to find peace. The forest, once a place of joy, was now a monument to her family's end. She planted a rose bush near the cave, a quiet tribute. The investigation wound down, but Clara's journey continued, her faith tested but unbroken. The past had spoken, and though it hurt, it set her free to mourn. If this haunting story grips you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales that unearth the hidden. Your support keeps these stories flowing. The rosebush Clara planted near the cave became a silent sentinel, its petals a stark contrast to the forest's gloom. As autumn leaves fell in 1996, she returned weekly, leaving notes for Harlan and Sophie, her words carried away by the wind. The investigation had quieted, but her heart refused to rest. Officer Jennings kept a line open, promising to chase any lead. The cave's discovery had answered the big questions: Kane's motive, Harlan's death, Sophie's fate. But small mysteries lingered, gnawing at her. Why the twin teddy bears? What drove Kane's grudge? The letters hinted at more, and Clara felt it in her bones. There was another piece to this puzzle. A breakthrough came in November, when a hiker found a rusted metal case near the creek, half buried in silt. Inside were old photos, Kane with a woman, her face obscured, and a child who looked startlingly like Sophie at 4. The dates on the back, 1979, sent a shiver through the team. Detectives rushed the find to Dr. Grant, who confirmed the paper's age matched the disappearance. The woman's identity was a dead end. Kane's record showed no family, but the child's resemblance fueled speculation. Could Sophie have had a doppelganger, or was this a clue to an accomplice? Clara stared at the photo, her hands trembling. "Who is she?" she asked Jennings, who had no answer but promised to dig deeper. The photo led to a new theory. Kane wasn't alone. The accomplice might have been the woman, possibly a lover or partner in crime. The journal's vague references to help supported this. Detectives scoured Kane's past, finding a mention of a Lila Hart in prison logs, a woman he corresponded with released in '78. Her trail led to a trailer park in West Virginia, abandoned since the early '80s. Neighbors recalled a quiet woman with a child, matching the photo's timeline. A DNA sample from a hairbrush preserved by chance was rushed for testing against Sophie's remains. The wait was agonizing, each day stretching Clara's hope thinner. On a cold December morning, the lab called. The DNA was a partial match, not Sophie but a close relative. Dr. Grant theorized Lila could be a half-sister, perhaps from a secret Harlan had kept. Clara recoiled. Her husband, unfaithful? The letter's mention of a burden took on new weight. Jennings interviewed old parishioners, unearthing a rumor. Harlan had counseled a pregnant teen years before, arranging an adoption. Could Lila be that child, grown bitter and allied with Kane? The theory held water. Kane's grudge might stem from Harlan's role in separating her from her mother. The photo's child could be Lila's daughter, not Sophie, explaining the resemblance. The revelation turned the case upside down. Detectives tracked Lila's movements, finding she'd died in '83, leaving a daughter, Elsie Hart, now in her late teens. Elsie lived in Ohio, unaware of her past. A meeting was arranged, delicate as glass. Clara attended, her heart pounding. Elsie, shy with dark eyes like Sophie's, listened as Jennings explained. She'd been raised by foster parents, never knowing her mother's story. A DNA test confirmed the half-sibling link to Sophie, Harlan's secret child. Clara wept, not in anger, but in sorrow for a life Harlan couldn't save. Elsie, stunned, offered a locket of her own, passed down from Lila, a twin to Clara's, engraved with H.W. Harlan's initials. The twin lockets tied the families together, a painful legacy. Elsie shared memories of Lila's rants about a preacher who ruined us, fueling Kane's plan. Clara forgave Harlan silently, seeing his burden as a noble lie. The case closed, but the forest held one last secret. A note in Elsie's locket read, "Forgive me, Clara." Harlan's final plea, hidden by Lila. Clara planted a second rose for Elsie, her unexpected kin. If this twist-filled tale pulls you in, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories that unravel the past. Your support keeps these mysteries alive. The second rose bush bloomed beside the first, a fragile bond between Clara and Elsie Hart, forged in the shadow of the forest's secrets. It was now late January 1997, the Pennsylvania winter biting at Clara's hands as she tended the plants, the lockets, hers and Elsie's, dangling from her neck. The note inside Elsie's locket, "Forgive me, Clara," haunted her dreams, Harlan's voice whispering through the trees. The case was officially closed, but Clara's quest for peace drove her to understand the full weight of his burden. Elsie, still reeling from her mother's dark legacy, joined her at the cave, seeking closure too. Together they faced the past, the forest a silent witness to their shared grief. Detectives, led by Officer Jennings, revisited the cabin, hoping the twin lockets might unlock more. The engraved HW on Elsie's locket matched Harlan's initials, but its presence with Lila suggested she'd taken it as a trophy or taunt. A new search of the compartment yielded a faded map, marked with a spot near the cave, labeled H's End. The team trekked there, finding a shallow pit with charred wood and bone fragments, too degraded for DNA. Dr. Grant speculated it was Harlan's initial burial site, moved by Kane after Lila's insistence. The map's precision hinted at Lila's involvement, perhaps directing the cover-up. Clara's stomach churned. Had Harlan's kindness to a troubled teen spiraled into this? Elsie shared more of Lila's past, pieced from foster care records. Lila had been 16 when Harlan counseled her, pregnant and abandoned. He arranged the adoption, shielding her from shame, but Lila felt betrayed, believing he'd judged her. Years later, meeting Kane in prison, she fed his resentment, plotting revenge. The photo's child, Elsie, became their leverage, a mirror to Sophie. Jennings theorized Lila took Sophie briefly, using her as bait, but killed her when Harlan fought back. The twin teddy bears were Lila's cruel signature, mocking Clara's loss. Elsie sobbed. I didn't know she hated so much. Clara hugged her, the lockets clinking, a bond born of tragedy. The pit's discovery shifted focus to Lila's role. Detectives tracked her final years, finding a letter to Kane postmarked 1982, hinting at guilt. The girl's death weighs on me. It suggested Sophie's murder haunted her, driving her to drink and early death. The cabin held a final clue, a scratched message on the wall, S forgiven. Was it Lila's repentance or Kane's? Dr. Grant analyzed the handwriting, matching it to Lila's prison letters. Clara felt a flicker of relief. Harlan's forgiveness had reached Lila, even if too late. Elsie, clutching her locket, whispered, maybe she loved me in her way. The investigation wound down, but Clara and Elsie turned the cave into a memorial. They laid stones, each etched with a name, Harlan, Sophie, Lila, a circle of remembrance. The forest, once a place of joy and then horror, became a sanctuary of healing. Clara wrote a book, Shadows of Faith, sharing their story, the locket's tale a symbol of redemption. Elsie, inspired, studied social work, vowing to help teens like her mother. The roses thrived, their roots intertwining, mirroring the family they'd become. On a spring day in 1998, Clara received a letter from a parishioner, enclosing a 1979 photo, Harlan with Lila, smiling, before the rift. It was a final piece, showing his care turned to conflict. She framed it beside the lockets, a testament to love's complexity. The forest held no more secrets, but Clara found peace, her faith renewed. Elsie stood by her side, the past a bridge to a shared future. If this emotional journey captivates you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that explore the human heart. Your support keeps these narratives alive.